The things that you have in your heart that you think are impossible are often just milestones waiting to get accomplished if you can push those limits. Everything was impossible until somebody else did it. So you can either hang around people that tell you it can be done, or hang around those that inspire possibilities. Welcome to the Inspiring Possibilities Podcast. Weekly interviews with entrepreneurs, artists, those that inspire possibilities. And I'm your host, Julian Marion. Hey, welcome to the Inspiring Possibilities Podcast. It's Julian, and I have an amazing guest today, Richard Yeargin III. Richard, welcome, man.
Man, it's an honor and a privilege. Thank you, Julian. I appreciate you, man. What's going on? Talk to me.
Yeah, man. Listen, I've known a little bit about your story, and so I knew that the next time that you and I see face to face, I need to go and reach out, right? So this is a little bit about Richard, right? But we're going to ask him to share more. So he's an author, he's a speaker, he is obviously a dad, a husband. He is a two-time national champ, Clemson football, right? And he has an amazing story. So I know I say a little bit about you, but is there anything else that you want to add inside of that?
Yeah, one of the things that I want to add, a lot of those things are responsibilities and or titles, right? Like it's a responsibility to speak. It's a responsibility to write and to be an author, but it's a earned title to be a father. It's an earned title to get to be a husband. But before any of that, right, I have to make sure that I make it very, very clear that none of this would be possible without my faith in my Lord and Savior. So, first and foremost, I'm a child of the Most High, and someone that I see life as these are all wonderful brands, but who am I really as a man? I'm a man of character, like I said, who operates out of his faith, that exemplifies integrity, honor, and courage in all that I do.
That is awesome. That is awesome. I know you even go sometimes, like when you go to an event, the last event you went to, you had that shirt that says "Seek Jesus,"
Right.
on it. So like you're there, understanding that, hey, like there's a lot of things that, I mean, just the fact of like, playing at a high level in a sport that doesn't have a big longevity, even from college, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, yeah, there's 4 years, but a lot of people that do not complete 4 years, because something happened year one, right? Like
Right.
one bad tackle, didn't sleep enough, and then you get hurt, get tweaked at practice, and then you're just like, this is it, So that's amazing. So tell me a little bit about kind of like, if you had to go and speed people through big moments inside of like your journey, right? Because your journey is like so rich, and I think we could spend like a full day just going over like different aspects of your journey. If you had to kind of speed through people through that journey and some of those big moments, right? Like how can you do that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to kind of give you some context as listeners, as to what he's saying, I was born into something that I had no idea was already created, which was my name, right? So I'm a variation of three Richards. So my father's Richard Sr., my brother's Richard Jr., I'm Richard Yeargin III. And I say that because my identity was already formed for me and I didn't even realize it. So throughout the course of my life, I leaned heavily on my father and my brother, in my earlier development years. And so as I got to the point where, I started to find myself and identify with my own crowd, I learned that a lot of the things that I dealt with in terms of the social aspect, I didn't know what I didn't know about myself. So I would say the one person that helped, I guess, illuminate my gifts or really, really define me individually was my grandmother. And so my grandmother, she spent every day with me, whether that was, before school, after school, making sure that I understood that I was loved. I understood that I was important and that I was her favorite one because I was the last of many, many grandchildren that she had. And so that special sacred time that I would spend with my grandmother um, really, really helped me to understand that even though I was the baby, or I was the third, that I was still God's one. And
Mm,
that to me was what led me to Christ, right? So after her passing when I was in the third grade, I took it real hard. I'm not gonna lie to you, real, real hard. And I spent days, weeks, months in tears, right? Because of how much of an impact she had left on my life. So at a very young age, I decided to accept Christ in my life. That was step one, right? Now I knew that I needed to fill that hole. I needed to fill that void that she left. And so transitioning into the younger middle school me, I I lost my way along the path,
mm,
the journey, because faith without work is dead. And I didn't realize that just because you choose to have faith, that the work ahead of you was going to make the journey a little bit harder. So as I got to middle school, man, I got involved in selling drugs, skipping school, really becoming a menace to society on the low, right? And I didn't realize that the identity and the things that I was taking on was because I was trying to be something that I was never meant to be, right? Which was that kid that, really all I needed was somebody to tap me on the shoulder again and say, hey, man, I love you. My brother was gone. He was off at college doing his thing. We're 11 and a half years apart. My father had me at the age of 40. So the disconnect was
wow.
different. He was dealing with cancer, and he was
Okay.
faced with incarceration for the second time for his second felony that he was technically being convicted of. And so there was a lot of things that were going on at that time period. My mom was working nonstop doing hair, running her business. So I was kind of, left to do my own thing and kind of figure out some of the world on my own, right? And so that transition led me, to a breaking point where I had a way out. And that way out for me was football. And so having a second chance to start over my life in high school and go into a whole different environment and leave the neighborhood, so to speak, was the straw that broke the camel's back for me, right? And so my father identified like, hey, we need to put you in a different environment, a different situation, because your current condition, right, is obviously it's going to lead you down a path of destruction, like a lot of your friends that's, to this day serving 25 to life. Some of them are dead from decisions that they made at those moments,
Yeah.
right? And so my dad knew I had a gift inside of me and I had skills that people saw, but I was so conflicted, man, my whole life with my skills and my gift, right? Like football being that skill set that took me places,
Yeah.
but that gift being my mind, that gift being my heart, that goodness, that richness that God had placed in me, that people would see that first and then they would get to know the player second. And so when I got to high school, man, I kind of kept that same mentality, which was, I was going to outwork other people. I was going to really show my gift, and I wasn't going to take it for granted no more because I had a new chance and a new start. So, man,
Yeah.
it was then, right, where things started clicking, things started changing immediately in my life because I had my older brother back in my life. He came back, to help push me and put me in a position that most of my friends and other people didn't have, right? And so that's why I say I became a part of something that was bigger than me, right? Like the three Richards were united, right, in order to help the one become, all that he could be. So, I was very thankful for that journey, man, of having my brother insert himself back into my life, impart the wisdom that he did, having my father, despite all of the things that he was dealing with and going through, he identified that by me being here and still able to be here for my son, I have the greatest influence over him. So, just seeing that, man, those things really help change and shape me and set me up for a good future to go to Clemson.
That's awesome, man. So how do you because I'm assuming, right? And I want to kind of like hit that part whenever you're at Clemson, because I feel like for a lot of athlete college years, there's so much happening in there, right? Because depending on your coach, obviously you guys, oop,
Hold
You
on
get
one
you
second. Yep.
you're good. So so I want to talk about kind of like that time when you were, at Clemson, because I feel like especially for guys or former athlete or college athlete, that time in college is such an important time, right? Like, some kids that come in and they were like their star in high school, they start in high school, and then get to college and say suddenly everybody was a star in high school, right? And
Right.
then you come in there, and so there's such a huge shift that can happen,
Mm.
positive or negative, right? Some people did come in there and they realize like, wow, I was actually not that great. Right? Or some realize like, oh man, like I'm actually pretty good. And you went to like, like one of the top, right? So I'm assuming that you had like many, many challenging time inside of your time at Clemson, right?
Mhm.
So I wanted to kind of say like, or see if you can give us that moment, a moment where you had like a really, really tough, time, and what did you do to conquer that moment?
Absolutely, man. When I first showed up on campus, it was adversity that hit me in the face, right? I mean, as an Army All American, as a top five African American scholar athlete in the country, you obviously come in with a lot of expectations placed on you, right? Not just by yourself that you give, but that other people place on you, and that can be a very heavy burden, right? To come in and think, I'm just gonna come in and be great. Like I don't have to do much. I already worked up to this point in my life. Like it's not a whole lot I gotta do wrong, right? Like you gotta be patient and you gotta again reapply those same methods that I used to get to the top of the food chain in high school back to college. But this time around, you don't have as much of that guidance around you. You go by yourself on this journey, right? So you don't take everybody with you on this one. You got to figure this out. And the hard part for me was trying to figure out, okay, if these folks recruited me here and I got to sit and wait behind multiple first round draft picks for at least the next year or two, I mean, what leave me to do in the meantime, right? So you get a little antsy in the pants. And so for
Right.
me, I mean, I came in, I redshirted, and that hit me like a ton of bricks, man. I started drinking, I started
Mhm.
hanging out, really wasn't really thinking about the implications long term of my decision making. And that time period where I redshirted, man, I wasted time. Like wasn't getting good grades in school. Might have had like a 2.3 my first semester of my
Your
freshman year.
purpose, yeah, purpose was kind of like down to.
Right, right. And I was the kid that was normally, used to getting 4.0s and above, man. And so I wasn't performing at a high level and I wasn't functioning at a high level because of the spirit that I was operating out of was not a spirit of excellence. It was definitely a spirit of fear and a spirit of mediocrity. So what I would say is, man, what changed in that moment was my teammate and my roommate at the time we had gone out one evening. It's past midnight, and we were going to go to the strip club and just have a good time, man, and celebrate. Man, we had two open bottles in the car, some weed,
Mhm.
and thank God, man, like that night didn't end worse than it ended, which was we ended up getting an arrest on our record for driving and drinking underage. But what that taught me was you can't ever give somebody the opportunity to crucify you. And that's what we did that night, right? We were just not thinking clearly. We were just living, right, in the moment. And so when we got pulled over and they're searching the car and they're asking us all kind of questions and we're not as coherent as we possibly can be, I'm just thankful that it only ended in them making an example out of us by having us call our coach and not throwing us behind bars and saying, hey, come pick them up. Right. So we were able to leave the scene and then able to, go from there in terms of what do we do next? Well, I mean, I got to go talk to Sweeney. So the very next day, it was very embarrassing for me, man, having to go to your coach and tell him, man, coach, I made some mistakes last night. I don't know how I got in this position, but you just trying to play the innocent card. Like, I have no idea how I got here. How can we fix this? And man, I think that time period of me going to Alcohol Anonymous, spending time in the community, doing community service, really reflecting on my life, man, I realized how angry I was because I wasn't speaking to my father. So I mentioned, the transgressions and things that took place in middle school that led me to be rebellious. But that same behavior showed back up my first semester of college because of the falling out that me and my father had had that not a lot of people really knew about, right? So me and my father weren't speaking, weren't on good terms. Um, and I realized, man, like how selfish I was, right? So me taking out my anger, my frustration, my aggression, and channeling it towards negative wasn't going to equal a positive result. And so I had to really look in the mirror, man, during my time of counseling, like I said, in AA, serving in the community, just really humbling myself, right? From being this 5-star athlete to being this person that, I mean, really, I didn't even know who I was, right? For those 6 to 9 months, starting out college, man. So I would just say to anybody listening, make sure that who you are that person, right? No matter what the situation or no matter what the down and distance is, make sure that you stay consistent all the way through and stay committed to that.
I love it. Yeah, and I think I think the way you're able to like, like connect the dots, I think are is really important, especially as a man, right? You and I kind of like, we're there at the King's conference, and you kind of realize that things that happen when you're younger, especially with your dad and that relationship, that blueprint and model can sometime or oftentimes just develop that blueprint for you without you fully knowing that that's what it is, or having those wounds as a kid that now are still there as an adult, but just now just being able, they're just elevated, slightly different. So that's cool that you figure that out, because I think a lot of people like have to get to that place, and they have to hear somebody's story to understand, like, maybe the reason I have this is because of that. So if I can heal that, then I'm healing this.
Hmm.
That's important. So whenever you think of like that journey, right? And obviously like it always sounds like easy, right? Like the way you're describing it, but I know it's not, right? And we
Mm.
know that the line, it's such a thin line, right? Like that moment of like drinking and having weed in the car, and I mean, it could have gone so many different ways, right? You could have got shot, right? We look at the way things are right now. Like you could have got shot, you could have got hurt, and so it's like you're looking at this, you're like, wow, I really have grace. Like there's a whole lot of grace in my life, and so we know
Mhm.
that. But I also think like that there has to be a trait or a character that you have that is different in other people, you
Mm.
know? And so what do you think is for you?
I would simply just call it favor, man. I think a lot of times we're afraid to say the word and call it what it is, but I've known for a very long time in my life that I have this way with people that
Mhm.
if you just give me 2 minutes or if you just listen to me for 2 minutes, right, you'll see my heart immediately because I wear my heart on my sleeves, right? In terms of my motto is service other people even when I'm wrong, right? So if I've done something wrong or if I've offended you, how can I serve you to make it better, right? Like what, not like what can I give you, but how can I serve you to make it better? Like what is it that I can give you in exchange for my shortcomings that's going to make up for whatever I did that wasn't right. And so when you're thinking like that and when you're moving with that type of spirit, like, how can I serve you to make the situation better? I think that that twists and changes the whole perspective on the situation because you're not looking to just say, I'm sorry, but you're looking to resolve the I'm sorry and say, no, here's a solution. Like, here's my thought process. What do you think? Like, what can I, like, thinking that way just changed the whole atmosphere. And I think that's the spirit that I operate with, even since I was a kid, is like, you know, how can I adjust myself by looking in the mirror and then, reapproaching you? So that's always been a secret sauce of mine, man, is just, you know, thinking of how can I gain favor, right? And the way I gain favor is I think about service.
That's all. Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's why you have. I know people can't see, but you have serve others, uh,
Right.
on your shirt. The school that I went to, the one of the big motto was like to serve, not to be served.
Right.
Kind of like servant leadership, which I think is sometimes hard for. I have 6 kids, right? That's 6 kids, 4 boys, 2 girls.
Right.
And everybody wants to be the boss, right? Everybody wants to be the because I have some kids that have a lot of leadership qualities. So everybody
Mhm.
wants to be the boss, wants to lead, and I have to remind them, like, listen, like leading does not mean telling people what to do. Leading
Right.
means like encouraging people. Leading, it's like asking, like, how can I help? Do you need anything? Like that's what a leader is, because a leader has to be followed. Like you know what I mean? Like you have
Yeah.
to want to follow somebody, and you follow who? People that
Right.
make you feel
Right.
good, people that
Right.
take care of you, people that you can see like will protect you. Like this is who you follow, not the one that tells you what to do. You don't follow that person. You're like, no, I don't want. I'm gonna find a way out as soon as I can find a way out. So I love it. So I have a quick, I have a quick question here. So it's kind of like because I know that as you kind of had to shift your identity, right, to some extent, from being like a top student athlete, top school, and now you go into kind of this corporate world, right? Like the jungle of what the heck do I do now, right? Like where a lot of athletes just this is the biggest pit for them because they were
Mhm.
there, everybody knew them, and stuff. And suddenly now I'm like, I feel like I'm a cog inside of this whole system, and that's where they go into like the heavy depression, gain weight, start drinking, don't care, like all that kind of stuff. So how did you handle that side, to be able to find a new identity, and how would you coach somebody to get there, from that pit to that peak?
You need a hand,
Mm,
right? And you need a ladder, and you also need a life jacket. And those three things come in the form of mentorship, going through darkness to get to the light, right? Like I'm very visual. So whatever I go through, I don't forget it. Whatever I feel, it sticks with me. And one of the things that I've taken throughout my journey, good or bad, during my times of transitioning is this too shall pass, right? And if you have that mindset that this too shall pass, you'll get through it. Even when you're struggling, man. Like I remember it was my last practice. I had just come back from the injury. I broke my neck in a severe car wreck, so I was out for a year.
mm,
And I reevaluated, reassessed, my whole entire life for that year. And I said, I want to go back and play football again. And so I did that fall at Clemson, knowing I wasn't really 100% clear from that broken neck. Um, but I wasn't going to give up on football, man. And so I remember that practice. It was like yesterday. I went to make another routine tackle after coming back after a year. And after I went to tackle my dude in practice, my whole arm just went numb.
mm.
I tore my labrum on top of my neck and then my meniscus. So everything was just
So that's
dark
going down.
at that point, bro. I remember going back to my apartment that night, man, and just doing massive amounts of blow, drinking, and smoking as much weed as I could to numb the pain and not deal with the fact that I knew this might be it, right? Like, so if this is gonna be it, I'm going out like Scarface. Like you gotta come see me, right? Like you got you gotta come see pissed, right? Like in that moment, I'm pissed.
Yeah.
But then I woke up and the sun came out and I realized it's a new opportunity for me the next day to either sit in that pain or turn it into some type of purpose. And so immediately, man, I got into this fix it mode. And I said to myself, even though I'm struggling right now, it's not going to be like this forever. This is a season. And taking that mentality with me helped me bypass, the suicide attempt. It helped me bypass putting myself in a situation where, you know, my wife didn't feel safe being around me at the time because of what I was going through, man. So she got it out of there, and I don't blame her. So everything around me started to cave in, and I had to stand 10 toes tall, right? And 10 toes down and figure out, okay, how am I going to navigate this space that I'm in? Man, I got to get some help. I got to get mentors in my life that have been to the places that I want to get to, and they'll help pull me up, man. And so I was very fortunate and blessed, still being in a good position here at Clemson, finishing up my undergrad, finishing up my master's, able to do internships, able to, connect directly with leaders in different industries and get an idea of what I wanted to do. So I must say, man, I was privileged, even though I felt like I was a sacrificial lamb in some senses. I was still privileged to having access, and I knew with access comes an advantage. And so those life jackets, that stepping stool, those things, man, I'm thankful to this day for those things because they helped pull me out of those dark times.
No, I love it. I mean, I can see the, I'm a visual person as well, so I can see definitely like, the hand, the ladder, and the life jacket, to be able to, for somebody to really understand like the purpose of them at different time. I think that alone, I think, has gold for people because they can figure out like where they are there and what do they need. So
right.
I love it, man. I appreciate you for taking the time to, to be with us today. I know that, today people don't know, but today was a little rough day for you. So,
yeah.
but you still showed up and, and gave us a lot of nuggets. So, as we kind of say goodbye, like how can people reach out to you if they want to kind of hear more of your story? Cause this is just such a tiny piece of your story. So if they want to learn more about your story, like where should they go?
Man, catch me on social media, Coach Rich, Coach Yerg, Coach Yeargin on Twitter. You can put in my first and last name, Richard Yeargin III. My website, richardyeargin.com. Please feel free to email me for any booking opportunities at bookings at richardyeargin.com. And feel free to pick up a copy of my new book coming out in 2 weeks, The Man is Greater Than the. Where I go in depth about all of these different stories. It's a part of my curriculum for K through 12. I deal specifically with ages 13 to 26. I specialize in student success and retention. So my mentorship program aims to resolve that knowledge gap for a lot of underprivileged, underserved minorities who are, obviously at risk of dropping out. That's who I am. That's what I'm about, and that's what I'm fighting.
That is awesome, man. I really appreciate you again for taking the time, and maybe we, in a couple of weeks we'll get you back on so you can tell us about the book.
Yes, Lord. I appreciate you, Julian, man. Thank you for having me on. And if there's any way that I can support you, bro, you let me know how I can do that.
Appreciate it. Thank you,
sir.
Hey, I hope you have enjoyed this episode. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, make sure to drop a review. Let us know how, you liked it and, what did you like about the episode that you listened to. Also, if this is your first time, make sure to subscribe so you can be notified as soon as we drop a new episode. And remember, accept compliments from everyone, limitations from no one. Talk to you soon. Bye.